So I've been at ISI since 2017, so that's about 5 years. I think this field of cultural modeling, better understanding culture, is something that's going to only grow. Everybody's, groups are unique, everybody's unique, and being able to account for that in our models is going to give us, better accuracy, better insights about how things are going to go. So right now I'm working on this project called Venice. What we're doing is we're identifying cultural values in rural regions of the world. So the idea is that in any place in the world, it doesn't matter the level of phone or internet connectivity, we can deploy a system there that will learn the cultural values of the region. And the idea behind why that's important is because people want to interact with these folks. And if you don't understand their shared values, their cultural norms, you can make huge mistakes. So one example is the Ebola outbreak a few years ago, right? So people didn't know that the norm was to take the dead bodies back to their house for a burial ritual, for a funeral. And because they didn't know that, they didn't realize how huge that particular epidemic would be. So there were huge under predictions of how many people are going to get Ebola. So if we can incorporate these things into our models, we should be able to do much better in terms of prediction. So some applications of Venice. I think I'll go with the application that we're working on right now, which is terrorism in northern Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado. So right now there's an insurgency in the region. Basically, there's Al-Shabaab. They're trying to take control of the area. And one thing that's particularly interesting about this is that there are some locals in the area who are pretty sympathetic to them. And those locals aren't exactly the types that you would expect. So for example, the region that we're really focused on, Ngade, is majority Catholic. You don't expect to see a bunch of Catholics joining Al-Shabaab, right? But they are in this particular region. And what that tells us is that our understanding of Al-Shabaab, of really just the whole, theater, the whole situation on the ground, is incomplete. There's something that we need to figure out in order to understand why people are going beyond this traditional religious framework in order to better understand their mental models about why it is they're joining or supporting Al-Shabaab. Right now, this is pure research, but in the near future, we have some transition partners in mind. So one is SOG Africa, Special Operations Group Africa. They've expressed some interest in this. Another is USAID. We've discussed on the side with them, and we're looking forward to working with them to deploy based on their needs. One thing I want to point out is that this is not all about just terrorism. So once we're done in Mozambique, we're going to go to Colombia to look at the drug trade there, gang activity, so on and so forth. And really, again, this should be able to be deployed in any region of the world. Our primary source of data is Telegram. So Telegram has emerged as a really great source of first-hand accounts, at least in Mozambique. There are a couple Telegram channels that we've been monitoring in order to better understand what's going on in the region. They contain extremely intimate first-hand accounts of violence in Cabo Delgado. So we've seen things like interviews with suspected Al-Shabaab members being posted directly to these Telegram channels. We've seen first-hand accounts of attacks where they're happening, so on and so forth. It seems to be, though this remains to be confirmed, it seems to be more accurate than these official watchdog groups that are trying to tabulate the amount of violence in the region. So Telegram is a messaging app. It's not too much unlike WhatsApp or Signal or any of these others. One of the reasons that we've been drawn to Telegram is simply because people in Mozambique use it, first of all. And beyond that, because it has this notion of channels, so there's this affordance for one-way communication that a lot of other chat apps don't have, and that makes it easy for us to get a lot of data about the region. So what we do is we have some measures that we think are universal for human behavior. So one of them is moral foundations. So moral foundations is this theory that says that every group in the world focuses on these 5 or 6 pillars. They just focus on them in different proportions. So when I say pillars, I mean things like fairness, authority, liberty, so on and so forth. Again, these are values shared by all cultures. It's just the order or the magnitude in which they care about them is different. So what we try to do is we try to understand the magnitude to which a particular group cares about those moral foundations. Another universal truth, let's say, is emotions. So we have a framework to detect emotions from the data that we receive, and we incorporate these into our forecasting algorithm. So basically, moral foundations and emotions are a set of variables. We measure those variables and we use them to forecast the future. So can a computer detect emotions? Yes, it can. So there are redundancies introduced into text based upon people's emotions. So for example, if somebody's angry, they might use a lot of exclamation marks. They might rely on certain words over others to communicate their feelings. And a computer can pick up on those redundancies. So that's pretty straightforward. I think the bigger challenge has been identifying moral values. So moral values, when we started this project, it was really based upon more or less keyword counting, right? So if somebody mentions fairness a lot in their text, we'll infer that fairness is important to them. But that might not be the case, right? There could be ways in which that could go wrong. So we've been working to come up with more elaborate algorithms that can look at the whole document and the whole person together in order to make that call about which morals really matter to them. How does a computer decide which morals are important to a person? Again, it's based upon the text that they generate. So when we look at their text, if we see that they're making more call-outs to certain moral pillars, then we'll make the inference that they care more about that particular pillar. Over time, it will get a better understanding of what words and what concepts are more important to that culture. But to say that the computer's doing it is only half the story, right? Because really it's bringing in the data that the people are generating. So it's just getting a better understanding of the data generated by that culture. My first love when I became an academic was about bias in data and the way that bias can really affect not just algorithms, but our perception of an online system, of other people, so on and so forth. And again, this understanding of shared values is another reckoning of that type of bias. People walk through the world with their own biases. Here we're calling them cultural values. And not all bias is bad, right? So here, these cultural values actually help these people to navigate the world. I mean, they're basically heuristics that people apply in order to relate to each other, to know what they should and shouldn't eat, so on and so forth. But nevertheless, understanding those biases, again, helps us to have a better picture of the culture and what it is they believe, how they'll act, so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think computer science is something that really anybody can get into. I think we're really fortunate to be where we are in this time. I mean, anybody with a laptop or with any computer for that matter can get their hands dirty and learn how to program a little bit. So like, I started off self-taught. I just, learned a few things here and there, with Google and my parents' computer. But then in high school, I took some classes and really, figured out how to do it correctly and learned that that's something that I wanted to do with my life. So it worked out. Science is a creative process. You have to come up with interesting hypotheses that are, worth pursuing. And that's extra important when you're seeking grant funding, right? You have to be able to convince others that that's interesting in order for them to fund you to do that. But specifically for coding, coding, you're creating something. It's by nature a creative process. You have to, of course, have a great understanding of the problem. In order to arrive at a good solution, you sometimes have to think outside of the box, as they say. I enjoy coding particularly because it's something I can do really anywhere. It allows me to do some problem solving, really think about what it is you're doing. And also it's so explicit, right? It's so, in a way, objective, right? You write a particular line of code or your particular block of code and it's going to behave in a certain way, right? And really, it's all up to you in order to get it to work. If it's broken, there's nobody else that you can really blame but yourself. Policymakers are going to be able to make better decisions. That's the bottom line. So one thing that ties all my work together, we're talking about Venice here a lot today. I've also done a lot of work on forecasting. So predicting future events, likelihood of certain geopolitical events, so on and so forth. All of that adds up to having a better picture of how things are going to go in the near to mid future. And if you know that, you can anticipate it, right? You can make decisions that are well aligned with how the world is most likely to take form. And that's something that we think is very exciting. That's also why we really need to be careful about the transition partners we choose, because we want to make sure that we are working with the people who actually can make the relevant decisions based upon the insights from our algorithms and systems. We've built several forecasting platforms that work to analyze geopolitical events. Geopolitical events is a very wide term. It can be anything from, what's the cost of corn going to be next week? Who's going to win the next presidential election in Chile? You name it. All of our approaches revolve around crowdsourcing. So this is taking a whole bunch of people who don't necessarily have expert knowledge, getting their opinions and aggregating them in good ways. Not only do we get their opinions, we train them on how to make better forecasts. So we show them machine models, we give them training, so on and so forth. And what we found is that through this process, we've been able to make average people very good forecasters. And because of that, we can have better predictions about future events. So we've done this through probabilistic forecasts. What's the likelihood of rain tomorrow? 70%. We've also done this a lot with prediction markets, so people can basically buy and sell shares about how likely they think certain outcomes are going to be. But the bottom line is these are all different ways of getting their opinions, which we then aggregate and turn into insights about how the world's going to go in the future. I would say that the thing that's going to be different between now and 50 years from now is the fidelity or the quality of the picture that we have for a certain prediction. So it could be something as simple as weather prediction even, right? So right now we can do a day out, a couple days out very well, 10 days out, it's just okay. In 50 years, it'll be likely that we'll be able to go not just 10 days out, but even further. Right now, there's a prediction market about, will Zelensky still be in power by the end of April, right? The last I checked, the price of that was 80% yes. That's going to change with time, right? So on and so forth. And the closer you are to the resolution, the more accurate it's going to be. What we want to do is we want to make our predictions as accurate as possible, as early as possible. So when I say fidelity, what I really mean is forecasting accuracy. So we expect to see, not just be able to answer questions farther out in terms of time, but also with greater and greater predictive accuracy, which means, in the example of weather, to be more accurate, have higher probability on the right answer that a certain weather event is going to happen. So it does mean getting more real-time data. Real-time data comes in the way of the people themselves. So when they make a forecast, it's based upon their best information at that time. So that is a real-time stream. It's also based upon things like other sensors, other variables that can be correlated with it, certain stock prices, so on and so forth. Those are other real-time variables that we want to be aware of. And then from there, the game becomes, again, aggregating all of those different signals in a way that leads to an accurate forecast. There's a very large effort in terms of trying to recruit people who may be interested, so on and so forth. So with our forecasting system, Sage, we put a lot of work into trying to find these transition partners. Unfortunately, the program was cut before we really were able to get it into anybody's hands, but we were talking with the SEC, so there's one that was interested in it. Of course, they're going to be interested in financial outcomes, crypto, so on and so forth, the FBI, and a couple others. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There are certainly things that you would want to be able to forecast that I wouldn't, and vice versa. I think a very common answer for most people is going to be financial outcomes. I think there's a lot of value to that beyond just making money. There's reasons behind why stocks go up and down, so on and so forth. Of course, many would want to know the outcome of elections, other political processes, bills, you name it. But again, it all depends on who's using these forecasts. And that's why I'm saying we really want to make sure that these tools end up in the right hands, because that's where it can really influence decisions being made. So we've done some work on cryptocurrency where we try to identify pump and dump operations. So pump and dump operations are nothing new. They've existed since the dawn of the stock market. The big idea is you take an asset, you take a security that has a relatively low price, and you buy some of it. Then what you do is you generate a lot of hype. Generally, for it to be a pump and dump operation, it should be false hype. That false hype drives up the price artificially, of course, and once that price is driven up, you then sell, taking the profit, and you leave all of these other victims holding the bag. For traditional securities like stocks, this is explicitly illegal. You can't do it. But in the space of crypto, it's possible to, it's much more of a gray area. Nevertheless, people are being victimized by these crypto pump and dump schemes. So in our work, what we did is we identify these pump and dump schemes. And the reason we can do it is because so much of the crypto world has to operate in a public space or semi-public space. We were able to identify places where these pump and dump operations were being organized. Again, a lot of this was happening on Telegram. So we identified a series of Telegram channels where people were organizing their pump and dump schemes. We followed those Telegram channels. We built a machine learning application that could identify the coin, the cryptocurrency that was about to be pumped, when they were going to pump it. And effectively what we did is we built an alert system around those signals that we could use to warn people that there was a pump and dump operation happening. The context of when we were doing this work was about mid-2018. This was right after the Bitcoin spike of 2017, and people were very much on the hype train for crypto in general, and a lot of people were being victimized by these operations. So we wanted to help people have a tool that they could use to see if a price increase was maybe more natural or maybe being driven by a bunch of scammers. One misconception is that general AI is a lot further along than it is. I would say that's still very much in its infancy and really doesn't do as well as we think. Even for very specific classification problems, it can be very, very difficult for an AI to do well. Of course, there's the whole killer robots thing, right? We're not quite there yet. I don't see that as being, I don't really see the Skynet thing being the way that we all kill ourselves. I think the real danger with AI isn't the killer robots. I think it's that it enables us to be the worst versions of ourselves. So when we think of things like recommender systems, so on and so forth, they just really create these huge echo chambers, which have caused things like this pernicious polarization that we see in our society, right? We don't talk to people who have different views from us anymore. And a big reason from that is because we don't even see their opinions anymore. And that's because of AI. I think that's really the peril of AI that we have to contend with. There's been some work, not mine, to try to deal with these echo chambers. So most of my work focuses on better understanding how these echo chambers form. But I think the main way to deal with these echo chambers is to not let them form in the first place. So research shows that if you take somebody and say, hey buddy, your view is wrong, they're not going to change their view, they're just going to hate you. So what we need to do is we need to get to them before these echo chambers form. And that can be really tricky, right? We don't necessarily know which topics are and are not going to be politicized. As it turns out, things that really shouldn't be politicized these days often are. So the first step is to figure out which of these topics is going to turn into an echo chamber. And then from there, figure out who we should work with to make sure that those echo chambers don't form in the first place. So we have a project right now called Civil Sanctuaries, where what we're trying to do is we're trying to deploy chatbots online. The purpose of those chatbots is to contend with the folks who are making the most noise, who are spreading the most invective online, but also to spread truth as fast as possible so that that can enter into the discourse before these echo chambers take over. How do you solve a problem created by AI with AI? This is where fairness really comes into the fore. If we can understand the biases in these systems, we can counteract them. That's not beyond the capabilities of current AI systems. So I wouldn't say it's AI with AI. I would say it's good AI with bad or poorly designed AI. So we're trying to overcome some of the short-sightedness by, in this case, recommender systems, right? So these recommender systems aren't taking into account what's good for people. They're taking into account what's good for clicks and making money and so on and so forth. What we're doing with our civil sanctuaries approach in this case is we're trying to correct for that. We're trying to say, okay, this mess has been made. This AI system can hopefully come in and mitigate it or clean it up. There are certainly people who would say that don't worry about fairness. We only care about accuracy. Most of those people are in the private sector, right? They could give a damn if it's fair. If they're gonna get 0.5% better accuracy or half a percent better click-through rate, that means millions of dollars to them. So they don't care. That's fine. But I think if you take the long view, even that argument doesn't hold up. right? So if you take the long view, let's say we're talking about giving out loans, right? Historically, the process for giving out loans has been very biased, very racist, so on and so forth. And that trickles into the models that we learn that are trained on that data. So it's well established that if you take historical data about loan decisions and you feed them into an AI system, that AI system is also going to disprefer black candidates for loans, okay? Now what we do in our work is we say, hey, that's messed up, and we come up with ways to correct that, to make sure that future loans are given out in a more fair manner. In the short term, maybe that doesn't help the bottom line. But in the long term, I think it does. And the reason is because if you are identifying candidates from minority groups who are good to give loans to, that means you're going to make more better loans, and you're going to get interest from those people. The current systems are leaving money on the table by looking over those minority candidates. Ours won't. Really, I'm more interested in these sources of bias and data. That's where I come at it more from. I mean, of course, I think fairness is important. I don't like to see AI systems that perpetuate the ugliness we see in the world. I'm happy to fix that. But from the academic side of things, it's more about identifying these biases, figuring out how they seep into the algorithms, and accounting for that. So the question is, why is Amazon and Google why am I not working at Amazon and Google? I don't know. Is that what this is all about? Is this just an interview? Okay, no. So I honestly, I think I'll push back a little bit on that. I don't think Amazon and Google really care too much about this kind of stuff. And that's one thing that is really important in my research. I don't want to do something that Google's already done better. So sometimes you see these features in a knowledge graph, and it's like, Google already did that, man. And they did it better. They have more data. It's disappointing. But looking at these niche regions of the world where there isn't a lot of data, isn't a lot of money to be made, frankly, is a really interesting angle for research. And also, one of the reasons I'm working at ISI and not at Amazon or Google is because ISI, we make things that I believe in, right? I don't think you need a box sitting on your desk that you talk to, right? I don't think that's necessary. But helping people, better themselves, that's a meaningful impact on the world. ISI has made significant contributions to many different areas, networking, AI, security, and I see my work really falling, of course, under the AI umbrella, particularly this cultural modeling. It's going to be important in the future. We need to understand the nuances of people in order to make better decisions. But I don't really think about my work that way in terms of what the ultimate recognition might be. I just think it's important to follow problems that you're passionate about and work on them and see where they go.